Hello, welcome to another Black History Moment, reading from Black Saga. 1691. Marriage between blacks and whites prohibited in Virginia. Although penalties had been previously imposed for intermarriage, this was one of the first laws in Virginia that explicitly restricted intermarriage. Whippings and other penalties were imposed for fornication. The Virginia legislature passed a law stating that any free English woman who had a child by a black or a mulatto would be fined the sum of 15 pounds sterling. If she defaulted, she would be taken into possession of the church warden and bound into service for 5 years. Illegitimate children were to be bound out as servants until they reached the age of 30. Women already in servitude were penalized with an additional 5 years of service. Virginia acts to force black freedmen out. Virginia passed a law that prohibited any slave owner from freeing black slaves without paying for their travel out of the colony. 1692. More slave laws enacted in Virginia. In this year, Virginia passed legislation modifying a 1682 law allowing sheriffs to arrest runaway slaves. The sheriff was permitted to shoot or kill slaves if they resisted or ran away. I'm going to read that again. 1692. More slave laws enacted in Virginia. In this year, Virginia passed legislation modifying a 1682 law allowing sheriffs to arrest runaway slaves. The sheriff was permitted to shoot or kill slaves if they resisted or ran away. A new law imposed banishment from the colony of any free white man or woman who married a black, a mulatto, or a Native American. Later, the penalty was changed to 6 months imprisonment and a fine of 10 pounds. Slaves could not keep horses, cattle, or hogs. Slaves charged with a capital offense were to be tried without a jury and could be convicted on the testimony of 2 witnesses under oath. Maryland, Delaware, and North Carolina eventually copied the Virginia laws of 1682 and 1692. Slave women among those accused of being witches in Salem, Massachusetts. After several young girls began to behave strangely, Tituba, a West Indian slave woman, and a number of white men and women were accused and tried for being witches. According to some accounts, Tituba initially confessed to being a witch, but later admitted that she had been beaten until she confessed. Tituba was jailed for more than a year, but was finally sold to pay her jail fees. A year later, the witch hysteria finally abated when the wives of high officials were accused. Judge Samuel Sewell, one of the best-known judges in the trials, later repented his part in the death of the 19 men and women hanged as witches. 1693. Movements of blacks restricted in Philadelphia. Philadelphia passed an ordinance ordering the constable to arrest all blacks gadding about on the first day of the week and to imprison them until the next morning. Those arrested were also to receive 39 lashes. 1697. Conditions deteriorate for slaves in Hispaniola. Spain gave up half of the island of Hispaniola to France. French sugar planters soon occupied the land with the intention of making a quick fortune and then returning to France. They proved to be especially harsh and cruel slave owners. Since they viewed themselves as temporary residents, the planters cared nothing for the local population. They grew increasingly fearful as black slaves increased, outnumbering whites by 20-1. Slave codes that prohibited slaves from meeting, carrying arms, striking or insulting whites, or moving from a plantation were imposed. Thousands of slaves ran away to escape such wretched treatment. Conditions were ripe for revolt. 1699 to 1845. Many slave mutinies at sea. As many as 55 slave mutinies at sea took place between 1699 and 1845. One of the most noteworthy took place aboard the Amistad. Thank you for listening to this Black History Moment.